give a warm welcome to Melissa. Melissa, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray. Okay, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Okay, all right, we got to get a little more lively. You know, 5G is an exciting topic. So first of all, thank you for having me today. I feel very privileged to be able to lead this area within AT&T, where I'm responsible for not only the technology transformation, but our network and where we're going from a 5G perspective. It's no accident that the beginning of the slide, the title says, 5G and SDN worlds collide. Well, why is that? Because we believe software is a critical component to the success, the maturity, and the advancement of 5G. I'll explain a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. Okay, so let's get started. When I think about 5G, the way I try to frame it up to my team and others is think about you are building a finely tuned house, right? One that has all the advancements that you'd want in the next generation home. Guess what? When you build a house, what's one of the most critical things in that house? It's the foundation. Any of you who have experienced building a home or have a friend who's built a home, and if there's a crack in the foundation, it's very expensive, right, to go back and fix that, as well as figure out the cost going forward. And so when we talk about the foundation of our house for 5G, it starts with our 5G evolution program, as well as LTE LAA. Okay, so what is that? What is 5G evolution? I'm here to tell you it's not 4G. It has speeds faster than 4G. Does it use a lot of the LTE advanced features? Absolutely. It has 256 QAM. It has 4x4 MIMO. And it has at least 3-way carrier ag. So in our trials and our tests, what we've seen with 5G evolution, we can get peak theoretical speeds over 400 megabits per second, right? That's an advancement. On top of 5G evolution, we have markets where we'll have LTE LAA. We've announced that we've already launched 114 markets with 5G evolution capability, and we have 7 markets with LTE LAA. We'll have much more by the end of this year, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so once you've got that foundation, you've got the spectrum, you have the efficiencies you need, you also have the 4x4 MIMO. Guess what? Now it's time to build the walls. Inside of those walls, though, you first have to lay the wiring, you have to do the insulation, and the electricity. That's what we call SDN. SDN is so critical to make sure that once you build and construct this house, everything works, right? Whatever network slicing services you have, whatever AI capabilities you want to advance, whatever data you need to use to advance those capabilities, you need SDN to realize those potentials. That's what we consider in the walls of our building. That's the software, what we call the secret sauce, that will make 5G a reality. Okay, so you've got 5G evolution that at any point in time will be upgradable to 5G. You've got the wiring and the plumbing, that's the software piece. And then, of course, to complete the home, what's important? You have the standard capabilities with 3GPP and 5G. That's what is then the rest of the paint, if you will. That's the roof on top of the house. And we have already announced that by the end of this year, we will be the first carrier to launch mobile standard 5G. We've announced 3 cities already, and we'll have more that come later this year. Okay, so let's move on. I talked briefly at the beginning about SDN and 5G. And we feel like that software is critical to where we're going. So when you think about SDN, we are the first operator to develop a virtualized mobile packet core. We did that over 2 years ago. Why is that important? Because that will take advantage of all the opportunities from a technology perspective that 5G is going to allow. Right? When we started with software-defined network, we said, okay, in order to manage this network, because we're going to virtualize our functions, what do we need? We need ONAP. We were the first to develop eComp. eComp became ONAP. That is our network software orchestrator. So many of you obviously have been involved with ONAP, but ONAP today, just to emphasize the importance and adoption, we have over 50 either technology providers, cloud operators, network operators that are involved in ONAP, which is our open source capability partnered with the Linux Foundation that we launched over a year ago. Just in that past year, we have 60% of the world's subscribers that are using ONAP. It's foundational to the house that we're building for 5G. So then when you think about, okay, so what can you do with software? What can you do with virtualization? We are going to standardize and commoditize our hardware end to end within our network. It'll go all the way from the access to the customer equipment and to the premise of the home. We announced not too long ago that we're going to have an open white box strategy. What does that mean? That means that we're going to first start with routers and switches. We have 60,000 that we've announced that we're going to decouple the hardware from the software. Okay, why is that important? Think about the speed and cycle time. We now don't have to change out a hardware and software stack. We can have commoditized hardware. We can have our software sitting on top of that hardware. And by the way, that software that we're developing in-house. And that software is then what can route and aggregate and move all of our data packets around our network. And that becomes critically important when you think about 5G. Why? Because 5G now will have an explosion of IoT devices, have an explosion of machine-to-machine capability. It will have more data moving through your network than you can possibly imagine today. And also, let's not forget latency. I'll talk about edge computing here in a few minutes. But we feel like we've started this journey knowing that 5G was in the future. We started with SDN. We talked about virtualization. We created eComp. We put our code out in open source. Why do we do that? To drive the acceleration of these applications that we may think about today, but ones we don't even know they're going to come in the future. Okay, so let's talk about AI and edge. I don't think it's any secret when you ask people, so what is 5G? What do you think 5G is? Some people will say it's gigabit speeds. Check, absolutely. Some people say it's ubiquitous coverage because you've got fiber backhaul end to end. Check, we got that. But it's also about bringing new experiences and business models to market, right? Such as AI, such as AR, VR, such as autonomous cars, such as robotic surgery, such as keep the list going, right? There's a list of things that 5G is going to bring that are so much more beyond a differentiator than speed and coverage. That's where the edge comes in. So with SDN, edge computing, virtualization, and our software, we feel like we have a formula that's one that'll drive business revenue as well as delight our customers. And so when you think about AR, many of you have probably put on AR, VR goggles, right? Think about gaming, how cool is that? But very quickly you get this nauseous feeling, right? And that's because you don't have the computing power and processing that's close enough to you as a consumer and the device you're using to help react with the brain and the images are seeing. So we're going to take our assets, whether it's our towers, whether it's where our small cells are, any of our physical locations, and we're going to move our computing processing from the centralized central office and data centers out to the edge of the network so that we can provide new and interesting capabilities. The other thing that's really interesting when you think about AI, what's important with AI besides a network that's super fast, a network is where you are and has low latency. It's also about the data that runs across that network. We have over 200 petabytes a day that we see across our network. We've seen a 360,000% increase in data over the last 10 years with our network. We have to have a way to mine that data, make it business ready and capable to make decisions on, as well as to help fuel use cases in the future. And so edge will be really important along with AI. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about where we are from a 5G perspective. So I mentioned at the beginning that what is important to us is to start with a steady and sturdy foundation. This is what we're calling 5G evolution. I talked about how we're in 141 markets today. We will be in 500 markets by the end of this year. That's 500, over 200 million pops. So those are customers in our markets that will have increased speeds than what they have today, which will be phenomenal. The second thing is we have announced 3 cities that will have standard mobile 5G by the end of this year. Those cities are Dallas, Texas, Waco, and Atlanta. Some people ask us, so why Waco? Believe it or not, it is a booming small business economy. If you went there today, you would see some trials that we have in Waco where we have a single connection for 5G powering several different use cases for small businesses within Waco, and the speeds are really, really good. We will announce more of our 12 cities later this year, so stay tuned for that. And also, if you think about use cases, so you've seen or heard about some of the standard use cases around AR, VR, around autonomous cars, around automated banking or robotics in healthcare. The other thing we're also going to do is make sure that we are out there and we are loud and proud about the use cases that we are going after. For example, we'll have a conference, what we call a SHAPE conference, later this summer, and we'll have 5G on trial there so we can learn more about the capabilities of 5G. We also are going to partner with Ericsson, Intel, and Fox Sports so that for the US Open, we will actually have 5G capability on the 7th hole of the green. And so we'll be able to televise, broadcast, not only to folks there on the golf course, but at home, a completely different experience in 4K using 5G capability. So if you think about the journey from an AT&T perspective, we started about 18 months right here in Austin where we did our first 5G trial. We learned a lot from that trial, right? We learned about millimeter wave. We learned about can millimeter wave actually penetrate foliage and buildings. We believe with the right performance tuning, it can. So it's absolutely a solid performer. After we did Austin, we then did 3 more trial cities in Waco, Texas, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and South Bend, Indiana. We looked at fixed wireless. We looked at using our fiber backhaul, making sure we have end-to-end support, because that's really going to be critical for 5G. So here's what I'd say just to take away from the crowd. We believe 5G is so much more than just speed. It's about latency. It's about bringing the experiences in a real-time perspective to our consumers. It's about driving new use cases for our business. What's going to be critical for that? Millimeter wave, without a doubt. What also is going to be critical is that you've got a network that's virtualized and that can react real time. It can support network slicing. It can support whether you're an enterprise customer, a mobility customer, doesn't matter, right? What's also important is that you have a network that can get access to data. It can take that data, anonymize the data, and then in real time help the network make decisions. It's also about making sure that you have a network that is wrapped in security, right? If you read the headlines today, there's no shortage of potential breaches and opportunities because of the bad guys out there. Well, with SDN and virtualization and 5G, as well as our open white box strategy, we are going to embed security from the beginning. We call it security by design. So when we start designing our software, when we start thinking about the software that sits on the commoditized hardware, security will be at the forefront. It has to be. It's what our customers expect, and it's what we have to do to make sure we continue to lead from an industry perspective. So that's where we're headed from a 5G perspective. Hope this gives you a little bit of glimpse of what's to come. Hopefully it also shows that when you think about AT&T, we are intent and passionate about continuing to lead in this space. We have a lot of opportunity ahead of us. We've got some of the most talented and bright and innovative people within our AT&T labs and our foundry team that continues to push the envelope to make sure that as technology advances are known, we capitalize on those and go quickly to market with our partners. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Melissa. Incredible statistic in terms of the growth of data running over your network.
Huge.
And for the past 7 months or so, AT&T has had a chief data officer. Now, what does that mean for AT&T? What kind of impact does that have on the team?
Yeah.
And what are the business implications of having a chief data officer?
This is interesting. So when I stepped into this role, it's been about a year now, one of the first things that I looked at is what are we going to do about the petabytes and petabytes of data, not only across our network, but what we have in our data lakes today. And knowing that, if data is kind of the new oil of the economy, how do you monetize that? How do you make your networks more efficient? How do you use network management and different techniques? So we created a chief data office. It has 3 key core components to it. One, it has data supply chain, which is the actual systems and the infrastructure where the data sits in the data lakes. 2, we brought big data. So thinking about how do you look at the data, monetize it, how do you use it for your operations? And then 3, probably most importantly, was automation. And so when you think about networks today and where we're heading in the future, I tell my team, if you're doing the same thing today in the same way that you did 12 or 18 months ago, it likely needs to be changed. Technology is changing so quickly that there is no way that you should be thinking about things the same. You have to determine how do you automate them, drive more efficiency, and data allows us to do that, right? Data is knowledge that helps us. When you think about what we've accomplished so far, so we have obviously a pretty big bogey this year to drive down cost savings, but as well make sure that our business teams understand where are our customers, what types of activities do they like, who's purchasing what products, of course, all in a very anonymized way. But think about today, for example, when we lay fiber, we have this integrated fiber planning tool. When we lay fiber, because we have consumers and we also have business customers as well, we can determine based on the data, based on where the poles are, based on where we have fiber, what's the most economical and best way to go from point A to point B. We can also then determine, for example, we have thousands of trucks that we dispatch, right, as it relates to our service for AT&T. We now use that data to determine what time of day should you dispatch them based on the road conditions, based on the weather, based on the SLA we've given the customer, and based on their preference if you come in the morning, the afternoon, or on the weekends. And so it has made a huge improvement into the efficiencies of our technicians as well as our customer satisfaction. Okay. So those are 2 key examples when you think about data.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Well, Melissa, that's great. Thanks very much for sharing the AT&T 5G update with us today, and hope you'll come to Denver next year and give us
I'd love to.
another
That'd be
update.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Melissa, thank you very much. Thank you.